All right, what's up? What's happening, everybody? Welcome into episode number 2 of Fast 5 Sports. I'm your host, Matt Infield. I'm joined by our digital king, stat boy among other names, Jacob Gallant. How we doing today, man?
Excellent. We got some good football last weekend, some good football last night that we're going to talk about a little bit. Of course, the Tigers and a bunch of Mid-South teams playing their first game of the season this week. So a lot of football to talk about. We're football heavy.
Last week was week 0, which, again, only in a sport as absurd as college football can we call something called week 0 a thing and accept it. But now it's week 1. Now the action really starts. We're going to get to all of that. First, of course, though, it is Friday, which means we have Friday Football Fever tonight. I will actually be anchoring our guy, Doc Holliday, out of town, but don't worry, I'll be filling in. We'll have Griffin Demaray covering our game of the week. So let's take a look at those games that we've got on tap this week. I believe we have 7 of them, actually. I think it was 6 listed on here. Yeah, we have 6 listed on here. There is one more that is skipping my mind right now. Actually, no, that was a game from last night that I shot, so disregard that. These are games that are happening tonight. Our game of the week, Melrose traveling to take on MUS. Like I said, our Griffin Demaray is going to be covering that game. Got a couple of North Mississippi versus Memphis schools in action as well. Horn Lake getting their season started. Remember, this is week 1 for all the Mississippi schools. The Memphis, Shelby County, Tennessee schools at large, they started last week. This is week 1 for Mississippi. Horn Lake making the trip to Southwind to take on the Jaguars, who won 69-0 to start out their season last week behind their star quarterback, Kelvin Perkins. Again, this kid is one of the best in the area. Only a junior. Catch him if you can because he's got bright things ahead of him. We've got South Haven and Center Hill. That is an all DeSoto County matchup in Olive Branch. So kind of a bragging rights of sorts on the line there. Back in Memphis, Oak Haven taking on BTW. Both of those schools lost in week 1, so they're looking for bounce backs. Only one of them, in theory, will get it. Over at Whitehaven, Craigmont making the trip to Mitchell, who, hung on by a thread last week to beat Westwood in a wild game at the Whitehaven Classic. Mitchell winning that one 14-12. And then one more, DeSoto County, North Mississippi versus Memphis matchup. Olive Branch making the trip to take on the ECS Eagles. They scored a win in their season opener last week as well. But yeah, our game of the week, Melrose versus MUS. Lots of new faces there. Kind of new but familiar faces headlining that matchup. MUS, obviously, legendary head coach Bobby Alston, who was with the school for 47 years, retiring in the offseason. His longtime defense coordinator, Mark Chubb, who was there for the last 18 years, now takes over as the head coach. I talked with him for the first time yesterday. Cool guy. Little different style than Bobby. It's always funny when you talk to coaches because, Mark Chubb is he was kind of intense with the defense yesterday, or just the team in general. And then he was coming over talking to me, and I'd never talked to him before. You're like, what's he gonna be like? Super cool. And like when he was talking with his team, it was nothing like out of line or anything like that. But it's just like they interact a certain way with their kids, try to get them game ready. Because guess what? If they don't, then they're going to embarrass themselves on Friday night. And he comes over and talks to me. He's super cool. I gave me everything I needed. I enjoyed talking with him, and he was telling me about his team a little bit. They are a young team. They returned their starting quarterback, Brady Hughes, from last year, who is now a senior, but a pretty young group. They lost to a good Bartlett team last Friday night on the road. So they'll be looking for a bounce back. It is their home opener. Melrose is coming in there. Melrose is cool this year because they have a pair of brothers, Jarrett and Gerald Morrow, who are Melrose alum from Orange Mound. I talked to both of them yesterday. They literally both have Orange Mound tattooed on their body. They are co-head coaches. They are twin brothers. They are co-head coaches. And if the last name Morrow sounds familiar to some of you who may have been following high school football around here the last couple of years, it's because is it Jared? It is Jared's son, Jamari Morrow. He started Germantown the last couple of years, Mizzou commit at running back, and instead of spending his senior season at Germantown, they wanted to bring him to Melrose as well because literally the entire family has graduated from Melrose. They wanted him to fall in line with that tradition. So he did not play last week, TBD, I believe, if he plays tonight. But yeah, lots of new faces across the board there.
Having co-head coaches is such an interesting dynamic. Yeah. It's almost something that would never work except if you were brothers.
Yes, and twin brothers at that. And, honestly, I want to see if I can get some of the clips from my conversation with them out on social media. But above anything, it's bigger than football for them. Like, they have so much passion for the Orange Mound community and wanting to use Melrose football as a vehicle to better it. Because, anyone who's been around here any amount of time knows that Melrose Stadium on Friday nights, when that team is good, that is a poppin' place to be, and the entire community supports them. So, yeah, like they just have a lot of passion for the community and trying to use Golden Wildcat football as a way to better that and bring some prosperity back. And they want to win as well. And they did score a win last week in the Soul Bowl against East 20-7 in a game. I think they told me yesterday they had 5 turnovers, a bunch of fumbles. So they said it kind of almost felt like a loss because they shouldn't have won that game, turned the ball over that much. But they were also missing, like I said, Jamarian Morrow and Ryan Brown, who was their Melrose's star playmaker last year. So they've got some good athletes on that side of the ball. So Griffin Desmarais is going to be at MUS tonight at 6 p.m., give you a preview, and then he will be covering the game of the week. We'll have that coming up on Friday Football Fever, the second week, tonight at 10. Anything else you want to hit on that?
No, just as a South Haven alum, that's the one I got circled.
Go Chargers!
I'm interested to see how the Chargers are looking this year. It's been an up and down stretch of years, but
I believe 2
hopefully
years
they can piece together something.
2 seasons ago, they were undefeated in the regular season, lost first round of the playoffs. Last year was rough for them.
It was.
They won 1 game in the regular season last year, 1 or 2. It was not a good year for them. But like I said, 2 years ago, they were really, really good. So, yeah, kind of both sides of the spectrum.
Hoping they can rebound here.
Go Chargers. Do have to turn to the sports story today, a really tragic story, and that is that Columbus Blue Jackets star, Johnny Gaudreau, a lot of people might remember him a little bit more with the Calgary Flames. Him and his brother, Matthew Gaudreau, who was a minor league hockey player, they were riding bikes in New Jersey, and on the eve of their sister's wedding, which is why they were back there, they were both hit and killed by a drunk driver. Johnny Gaudreau, 31 years old. Matthew Gaudreau, 29 years old. Johnny Gaudreau was a 7-time All-Star in 11 seasons. I'm going to try to keep myself as composed as possible here because this is one of those stories that, like, literally from the moment I saw it this morning just kind of pissed me off. I just have no sympathy for people who get behind the wheel after they've had too much, and, I mean, just permanently has shattered this family. Johnny Gaudreau was a father to 2 young children. Like I said, 31 years old, has his entire life ahead of him, both on and off the ice. For his brother to be killed as well, again, on the eve of their sister's wedding. They were both supposed to be groomsmen in this wedding. Yeah, man, I just, especially in today's day and age when there are just a million different ways to make sure that you get around safely, all you have to do is get on your phone and tap any number of apps or get a cab or whatever. It's just inexcusable. And every time I've looked at the guy's mugshot that ran them over, and I know we're saying alleged because that's the correct way to go about it, but he has apparently admitted to the cops that he had 5 to 6 beers before he got behind the wheel that contributed to his driving, and he ran them over and killed them. Yeah, man, it's kind of enraging just thinking of the way that he shattered, took away their lives, shattered the Gaudreau family's lives, and has really broken the hearts of a lot of people in the sports world and beyond. So, yeah, man, lock dude up and throw away the key. That's just where I'm at.
It's been pretty heartbreaking to read some of the tributes, just, to young kids, just a guy, just entering his 30s,
Yep.
still at the prime of his career, Obviously, the family thing is, more important than his NHL career, but there's a lot of people that were rooting this guy on every game, and
Yep.
It's just sad.
Yeah, really, really sad. Lock dude up, throw away the key for as long as they can possibly can. Because like I said, me personally, I have no sympathy for that. That's one of those crimes that there's just too many ways to make sure it doesn't happen, and it's a choice at that point. And yeah, I have no sympathy for that dude, and heartbroken for the Gaudreau family. It's an incomprehensible loss to lose both of them at the same time, and especially given what they were home for, their sister's wedding this weekend. So I hope that they can somehow, some way find comfort sometime soon, because obviously that's just devastating for sure. So rest in peace to Johnny and Matthew Gaudreau, and hopefully justice is swiftly served for the guy that made the incredibly stupid decision to drink and drive and kill him. All right, let's turn a little happier note here. Let's go to, we talked a little high school football before. Let's talk a little college football. Lots of Mid-South teams, basically every Mid-South team in action this weekend, including right here in the 901. The much-anticipated Memphis Tigers season finally begins at home tomorrow against North Alabama, a game they are, at last look for me, they're like 39-point favorites. So they are expected to win. They are expected to win pretty big. I know you did some digging on North Alabama.
I've got a little North
Go
Alabama research. Well, just for starters, the Tigers, and actually I'm going to pull this up. We've got some interesting data available on NCAA's website. Let me close that out. So they have a list of every FCS versus FBS team wins. You see there's already been one this season, Montana State over New Mexico.
Yep.
Just 4 last year, so extremely rare.
Wow, that Idaho 33-6 last year kind of stands out.
Extremely rare occurrence. The last time that Memphis was involved in one of these, they lost to Middle Tennessee State back in 2012.
Okay.
So they're 10-0 since then against FCS opponents. So this is obviously a team that you go in, you're expecting a Tigers win if you're a fan.
Yep.
Obviously, if you're on the team, you can't really take anybody lightly. But some info about North Alabama. They have already played a game this year.
Yes,
so interestingly
they
enough,
lost to SEMO last week.
They lost to SEMO 37-15.
They were up in that game and it just collapsed.
Yeah, they were leading at halftime, lost
By 21, by 3 touchdowns.
right, by a few scores. Last season, 10-3, their offense averaged 458 yards a game.
Juggernaut.
So
me on
a
NCAA
high-powered
Football
offense.
25.
I got an NCAA 25 comparison upcoming too, with a different game, not the Memphis game.
Say less.
So North Alabama has
the Tigers
played.
played them 2 years ago as well.
Yes, they.
That was 2 Novembers ago, I believe.
See if I can get the final score. I know it's on here. I should have highlighted some stuff here.
No, it was a pretty easy
yes.
win though.
Oh, 59-0 was the final score of that
it was
game
a pretty easy
2
win.
years ago. North Alabama, not a historic program, but coming off a good season.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, or fortunately, they did lose last week with an early game against SEMO. But if they carry over from last year, high-powered offense that can cause teams some trouble.
Yeah, I asked Ryan Silverfield at his press conference this week just about the Tigers. They've just heard so much hype for the last 7-8 months, and they can try and block it out as much as they can. But in the world that we live in with social media and everything, they've heard a lot of how great they are for the last 7-8 months. So I asked Ryan, I was like, you guys are basically 5 touchdown favorites. How do you keep them locked in on this game and not overlooking a North Alabama? Because obviously it goes without saying, for all the hopes and dreams and aspirations this team has this year, if you lose week 1 at home to North Alabama, bye, those are all gone. It is over right as it starts. And he basically said, actually, it's interesting. He used, so North Alabama played Florida State late last year. I believe this was the game that Jordan Travis got hurt in, suffered that really gruesome leg injury. But at one point in that game, North Alabama was up on Florida State, and obviously a good, very good Florida State team that was probably should have been in the college football playoff in my opinion. I'm not getting into that whole discussion, but certainly right in the thick of that discussion, they were up 13-0 on them. They didn't win that game, but
they didn't even come close. It was a final score of 58-13.
Right.
But point stands.
Right. They were up at one point in that game. And Ryan said that he, I guess, printed out a screenshot and put it on the locker room or somewhere in the media room or whatever to drive the point home that they could play. And at a certain point at this level, these are all really good players, and you have to have some sort of a level of competitive respect for them. Do I expect tomorrow's game to be close? No. Do I think the Tigers handle business relatively easily? Yes, but you still got to show up. And the nice thing about, if you can take care of your business early, you could probably get your starters out of there, get some backups in, get them some reps, keep your starters fresh for next week against Troy, which I think will be a really good game. That could be one of the better Group of 5 games of the entire season, if not the best. So, yep, Tigers home tomorrow. We will be there for that one. What else in Mid-South? Ole Miss starts talk about another team in the viewing area with some very high aspirations this year, some very real hopes of making the college football playoff. They start off at home against Furman. Again, I think kind of everything we just said about Memphis probably also applies to Ole Miss. I'm not sure what the line on that game is. I imagine it is probably pretty similar, if not higher. It might be close to the 50-point mark. Again, take care of your business. Don't screw around too much. Get out of there with a win. Move on to next week. What do we got here?
42 is the
42.
line for Ole Miss over Furman.
Okay, so yeah, pretty similar. But hey, Furman's got a pretty famous upset in their school's history. It was in basketball, but still. Shout out Kevin Harlan for the Virginia call. A couple NCAA tournaments ago in 2023.
We did have some big lines last night.
Huge.
One team that did cover was Arkansas, 70-0 obliteration.
Pine Bluff.
Pine Bluff. That one was pretty much over as soon as the kickoff.
Yeah.
As soon as the opening kickoff happened.
They took care of business last night. Good for them. I do have, man, I got questions on how long. I think I saw Sam Pittman is either the favorite or the second highest odds among, I believe it was Power 5 coaches to be fired first this season, basically. This is a pretty important year for the Razorbacks, and there are some signs in there. Yeah, they go to Oklahoma State next week. That's tough.
It's a brutal schedule for basically everyone in the SEC except maybe Missouri. But, they've got Oklahoma State. They've got to go at Auburn, Texas A&M.
Home against Tennessee.
Home against Tennessee, LSU.
But these are
both the Mississippi schools and also Texas and Missouri later in the season. It's a brutal schedule.
I think – scroll through the schedule again, like go a little bit down. I think if they are in a bad spot, after the LSU game, I think Sam's gone. The question then becomes, who replaces him? Because this struck me as a panic move to win back some of the fan base the moment it happened. But bring back Bobby Petrino, all-time wild move. And again, I think that was to appease the fan base, maybe some boosters, some donors, whatever it might be. But
I think it upset a lot of the fan base as well.
Yeah.
It just as ugly as an exit from the school as you could probably get.
Yep.
So I guess it's a lesson to you can always come back.
Yeah, no, if Bobby Petrino could go back to Arkansas, you can come back from basically anything, for sure. But yeah, pretty important year for them because it's hard to imagine if they finish below 500 that Sam Pittman is back beyond this season, if he even makes it through this season.
In looking at their schedule, it's kind of hard to envision a 500 record.
Yeah. Especially conference
if
play.
If they can beat Oklahoma State next week, they'll be in a good position.
I feel like if they upset Oklahoma State, that would give Sam a lot of wiggle room. Mm-hmm. Yes.
But this 4-game stretch with Auburn, A&M, Tennessee, LSU, that's going to make or break this season. You kind of have to win one of those.
Yep.
Even just to go for a 500 record.
Let's talk about your boys. You are the resident Mississippi State alum on this show. There are plenty of Bulldog alum in this newsroom. Year one under their new head coach. What are your thoughts on kind of the expectations for this year and I guess what defines success for them this year?
Yeah, I mean, you just kind of want to have a little bit of hope for the future whenever you bring in a new head coach. Obviously, the state of the program is kind of in flux right now with Zach Arnett only lasting one season.
Not even a full season.
Right. And, last year was just kind of funky because a lot of the players were recruited for the air raid, and last year was not an air raid offense. And you saw Will Rogers really struggled.
Yeah.
He's very talented. He transferred to Washington where he's supposed to be the starter this year.
Is he still there? Because he was there. He went there when Kalen DeBoer was still their head coach, and now obviously he's at Alabama.
I believe Will Rogers is the projected starter right now. But I really want to see the offense to look at least better than last year, if not incredible. I'm not expecting a huge high-powered offense in year one of this Lebby offense, but Lebby's an offensive guy.
Yep.
Mississippi State's needed offense for quite a while, and so it'll be interesting. it's hard to expect big things in year one.
Yeah.
But as long as there is positive momentum, that's really all you can ask for as for a first-year head coach, unless it's an Alabama or another program like that that's already expecting big things.
I'm not going to try to pile on Zach Arnett too much because this is obviously happened and gone, and he's at Ole Miss now. His time ended there very quickly. And obviously he took over an impossible situation after Mike Leach suddenly passed away. I just kind of can't comprehend why you, as a defensive-minded coach, step into this situation, which is tough, obviously. Like I think that Mississippi State, after Mike Leach passed away, they were just looking for someone to lead the program, like someone who could keep things on the rails and keep everyone pulling in the same direction. That's fine. I get all that. But you're a defensive coach, and one of your first major moves is to say, okay, I'm replacing this legendary offensive coach who literally created a system that is used all around college football decades later. Some elements of it are still used in the NFL. And you say, nah, we're going to scrap that system that's worked well with our players, and we're going to go with a more pro-style system. And, the results were what they were. It was just kind of a baffling series of decisions there. But yeah, Jeff Levy coming over from Oklahoma, correct? Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
he was with Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss for a few years. I'm sure that factored into the decision. As with, a lot of time these schools will hire guys back and forth.
Yeah.
Yeah, looking for an edge in their rivalry.
I definitely think they had to go offensive coach after
Absolutely.
the defensive coach disaster that was Arnett in year one. So, yeah, let me roll through their schedule again real quick. I know they've got Eastern Kentucky tomorrow.
Eastern Kentucky, an away game at Arizona State.
Yep.
So, Pac-12 After Dark in spirit.
Toledo, it's in Starkville, but Toledo's at least a little interesting.
Florida will be interesting because I don't think Florida is a team that has a lot of high expectations this year from many.
Billy Napier might be one of the only coaches whose seat is as hot as Sam Pittman's.
Yeah. So I know Andrew Douglas has got
Texas,
that game
Georgia, and both of them are on the road. Ugh.
Yeah.
That's tough.
Of course, you got A&M, Arkansas.
UMass,
a
baby.
little UMass action coming into Starkville.
UMass, and then go to Knoxville.
Yeah. So it's
and then the Egg Bowl.
Knoxville, Missouri, Ole Miss. It's a brutal schedule.
That's rough, yeah.
As is basically everyone in the SEC
Yeah.
this year. I think Missouri's schedule is pretty favorable. Ole Miss has a pretty favorable schedule, at least for the first half of the year. And it's pretty much a bloodbath for everybody else, especially with Oklahoma and Texas coming over.
Last Mid-South school we want to hit on real quick. The Tennessee Volunteers, they start with an all-volunteer state matchup against Chattanooga at Neyland on, I believe that's a morning game tomorrow. Again, although these in-state games, and Chattanooga is not, I don't know if Chattanooga is going to totally roll over. I'm not sure what the line is. I would expect the Vols to win, but you never know. Chattanooga could at least hang around for a little bit. Tennessee, of course, another new starting quarterback. Nico, I can't pronounce his last name. I'll get it at some point this season. But a highly touted young kid.
38.5 is the line.
Okay, so they're expected to roll them. Nico, let me see if I can pronounce it. Amaliva? Maybe. I'll get it right at some point this year. I know that he is a very highly touted young quarterback coming in that they're hoping is their guy of the future for the next couple of years. But interesting year for them, like not like in terms of like Josh Heupel's like CP warm or anything like that. He's totally fine. But I do think that it's kind of a fair question to wonder if 2 years ago when they were on the verge of making the college football playoff before they lost to South Carolina and Hendon Hooker tore his ACL in that same game, that was the best year of the Heupel era. And that certainly gave a lot of credence to what he was doing. But then last year under Joe Milton, it kind of goes back to what they've been recently. Certainly better than the pre-Heupel days, but like good, but not a serious contender for anything substantial. So
yeah, I think a big season would do a lot to turn that around.
Right.
But like I said, with college coaches, you always want upward momentum.
Yeah.
And so if it's looking a little bit down,
things
can turn sour quick.
No, for sure. And Hooker was really good. You got to remember that talent, the talent on the team a couple years ago too, because they had not just Hooker, they had Cedric Tillman, who was with the Cleveland Browns, they had Jalen Hyatt, who was with the New York Giants. They had a lot of NFL talent on that team. And I do now, last year they did have Joe Milton. Now, Joe Milton is a rocket arm quarterback. He does have some flaws in his game in that he might only be able to throw fastballs even to receivers 5 yards away. But yeah, I think that it's an interesting year for them. I'm not going to quite say it's a fork in the road year for Tennessee, but I do think if they have another season like they did last year, I think some people, and if that were to happen, I think the one thing that would probably bail them out a little bit from some of those questions is that it is a first-year starting quarterback. But still, you'd like to kind of get it closer to 2022 than 2023. And yeah, they've got a tough.
It's not the most difficult schedule, but it's definitely not easy.
Yeah.
NC State is next after Chattanooga. NC State did struggle last night, but they ended up with the win. A lot of people are expecting big things out of them this year.
That's a neutral site game in Charlotte too, the Dukes Mayo Classic, because we don't have enough Dukes Mayo sponsorship items in college football.
But yeah, of course you see Oklahoma, Alabama, Georgia on the schedule. So you're probably going to need to win at least one of those, plus an NC State if you want to make some noise.
Honestly, I think.
But it's pretty doable as a schedule. I mean,
I think Oklahoma is a pretty big swing game, actually, because it depends on what Alabama looks like in the first year under Kalen DeBoer, who comes over from Washington after taking them to the national championship game. Yeah, but I mean, if they can go to Norman and beat Oklahoma, then all of a sudden you're looking at
that would be huge.
Yeah, like you might have 2 losses in the SEC, and all of a sudden you're like, man, that's a pretty solid year. And granted, nothing is guaranteed in college football because they could lose literally any one of these games. I doubt they lose tomorrow, but they could lose any one of these games. But I think they could, if Nico is the real deal and he hits the ground right, I think they could probably win double-digit games.
Absolutely.
It certainly seems doable. All right, so yeah, that's college football. College football is back in full swing. We love to see it. NFL is back next week. Also love to see that. We'll talk more about the NFL at whole next Friday, because when we come on air next Friday, we will have the first game of the season in the books between the Ravens and the now 2-time defending Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs. But we will hit on one NFL item real quick before we get out of here, and that is we'll give, as Doc Holliday would say, a salute and clap to some Memphis Tigers that have made NFL rosters. Bryce Huff, I wish my Jets did not get rid of him, but that was a choice they made. They also made the choice to trade for Hassan Reddick from the Eagles without a contract. Great, good stuff. And yeah, the Eagles are kind of like the unofficial University of Memphis. 3
Memphis Tigers on the Eagles. So if you're a Tigers fan without an NFL team to root for,
yep, Eagles might be it. Bryce Huff, and like legit contributors too. We'll see, with the Eagles bringing in Saquon Barkley this offseason, we'll see how big Kenny Gainwell's role is. But when he's gotten the opportunity the last couple of years, I've liked what he's brought to them, even if it's a kind of a change of pace kind of role. And obviously Jake Elliott, one of the best, if not.
So something interesting that I found when I was researching for this story, this article that I wrote on our website, I had forgotten that Jake Elliott was drafted by the Bengals, who cut him before the season, and now he's been with the Eagles for 8 years.
It's funny,
it's kind of bizarre to draft a kicker in the 5th round and just
cut
ties before he even plays a game. But
kickers are weird, man.
I mean, the Bengals really missed out. He's been one of the league's best kickers since he kind of came in.
And the saving grace for them is that they drafted the kid Evan McPherson out of Florida, and he's been nailed since they drafted him. But yeah, kickers are weird. I mean, you think about probably the best kicker in the NFL last year was probably, if not Jake Elliott, probably Brandon Aubrey on the Dallas Cowboys, who was in the USFL, and then the Cowboys picked him up, and he comes in and he's nailing 60-yarders left and right. He's probably the best kicker in the league last year. And then you think about the best college kicker I ever watched was, you remember the name Roberto Aguayo on Florida State?
How can you forget?
2nd-round pick of the Buccaneers, just flamed out in the NFL. I mean, it is such a mental thing. Obviously, you got to have the ability to make these kicks, but if you can't mentally put yourself in the right space, it can go off the rails pretty quickly there. But yeah, Jake Elliott obviously continues to do his thing as one of the best kickers in the league. I think the Eagles are going to be really good this year too. I like bringing Kellen Moore as the offensive coordinator. Tony Pollard, obviously, back home in the state of Tennessee with the Titans. Listen, we can talk about it next week. I am very sneakily in on the Titans this year. I really like.
They've got a very interesting offense around.
Yeah, Will Levis, yes, and I like every time I've heard Brian Callahan, their new head coach, talk this offseason, the main thought in my head is that this guy gets it, and he understands the way that modern NFL offenses work. Obviously, he was the Bengals offense coordinator with Joe Burrow. That offense was obviously incredible the last couple of years, but I think probably just as impressive was last year when Burrow suffers the wrist injury. He's out for the season. They kept the wheels on track with Jake Browning as their quarterback, and I think that was probably just as impressive as anything. But yeah, they've got Pollard, Tyjae Spears, who had a really nice rookie season out of the backfield. DeAndre Hopkins, who I know was hurt in training camp, but it sounds like he'll be ready for week 1. Calvin Ridley, who they gave a bag to in the offseason. We'll see if he's worth the bag.
Very good last year.
Yeah, and as a number 2 receiver, I think he'll be even better. Tyler Boyd, who I think, even if he's not as good as he used to be, is still like a solid slot receiver. And we'll see about Chig Okonkwo. I know a lot of people were expecting a breakout from him at tight end last year, but maybe this is the year under a different offense. To me, above anything, with all due respect to Mike Vrabel and the way that they did things the last couple of years, the Titans have just been one of the most boring teams in the NFL for a while, and playing this 1960s brand of football. And I get when you've got a running back as good as Derrick Henry, you're going to build it around him and go from there. But you got to throw the ball.
You say boring, but some people love to watch you just run the rock right up the middle.
It's
fun to watch.
I love a good running game.
Not when it's not working, but when it's working, it's beautiful.
Right.
We respect the I formation around.
No, I respect it. You can pass out of the I formation too. You can do it. You can do some creative stuff out of the I formation. I think above anything, it's a big year for. Again, we'll talk about more for next week. Big year for Will Levis, though. Actually, probably flashed more than a lot of people expected last year. After they took him in the second round out of Kentucky. But we're going to find out if he's got the goods or not, because the situation is ripe for him to really break out. So we'll see. Who else we got? Arthur Mollett, former New York Jet with the Baltimore Ravens now. He played really well for them last year, too. And the Ravens are a team that gets the most out of defensive players, so I'm not really surprised by that. Dylan Parham back with the Raiders for another season. He'll be their starting right guard once again. Curious how the Raiders do this year. Some red flags there offensively, but I don't know if that's Dylan Parham's fault. It's more of a Gardner Minshew, Aiden O'Connell problem to me, but we'll see. Antonio Gibson signed with the New England Patriots this offseason. Again, another offense that I'm curious to see. You know, at the beginning of the year, it might not be that great, especially because their offensive line is really rough, and that's why they're literally holding Drake May back from starting, because they don't want to ruin him.
That team could be really poor and could rely on their running backs a lot.
Yeah.
Which could be good for Antonio Gibson.
Yeah.
You know.
Especially catching dump downs and stuff like that out of the backfield. Yeah, for sure. Man, Calvin Austin III, I'm really excited to see what Calvin does this year, because there is opportunity in that Steelers wide receiver room after they traded Deontay Johnson in the offseason. George Pickens is the one returner there. They drafted Roman Wilson out of Michigan in the 3rd round. After that, I mean, there's an opportunity there. Who else is there? Van Jefferson. Now, I do question how much the wide receivers are going to get involved, because remember, their offense coordinator is one, Arthur Smith, who didn't like wide receivers all that much when he was with the Falcons.
You got to wonder how the Russell Wilson, Justin Fields experiment is going to work out. They're going with Russell Wilson for now.
When's Fields start by?
What's that?
When is Fields starting by? I'm giving Russ 5 weeks.
Oof. Yeah, I think maybe 5 weeks.
And I listen, like, I've long been a fan of Justin Fields. He might not have the goods, but I just think he's better at this point than Russell Wilson too. Like, Russell Wilson was really bad last year. Not a huge fan of his game anymore, to say the least. But we'll see. Steelers will be interesting. I know there are a lot of Steeler fans in the 901, so we'll keep our eyes peeled on that. Patrick Taylor Jr., former Green Bay Packer. We got a Packers fan on here, landing with the Packers' kryptonite, San Francisco 49ers. We'll see how much of a role he has.
I liked Taylor in the limited action he got in Green Bay. Obviously, he didn't get a ton of carries behind Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon and even Emmanuel Wilson, but he's a guy, I think, if given some opportunity, he could flash a little something.
As you wrote in the article, though, when you were behind Christian McCaffrey on the depth chart, it's kind of tough to see how much opportunity you're going to get. And Jordan Mason, their backup, is someone that I think that they have a good amount of belief in as well.
And he probably made the roster off of Elijah Mitchell being out for the season. But you take your opportunities where you get them.
100%. So. J.J. Russell, former first-team All-AAC guy, back with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He's been with them for the last couple seasons. Let's give a shout-out to Blake Watson, who is someone that I was surprised he didn't get drafted. And maybe not surprised just because he's an undersized running back, but thought he should have been drafted, thought he showed enough to get drafted. Well, the Denver Broncos made him kind of like a priority undrafted free agent. He has made their 53-man roster out of his first training camp in the NFL. Now, I'm curious what this backfield looks like because they have 4 running backs right now that all could vie for playing time. Watson, Javonte Williams is the presumed incumbent starter. Audric Estime, big bowling ball running back out of Notre Dame that they drafted this year. And then Jaleel McLaughlin is someone who I like a lot, who kind of has a similar skill set to Blake Watson as a pass-catching running back. But I very much believe that this is kind of like an experimentation backfield right now. And I think that, yes, in theory, Javonte Williams is the incumbent starter and something close to a workhorse running back. But you got to remember, Javonte Williams was taken before Sean Payton got there. Sean Payton has no allegiance to him. And he might end up being the guy, but I think that there is opportunity there for the taking for whoever grabs it. So I'm curious to see what kind of role Blake Watson can carve out for himself. He had a nice preseason, so I think he deserves a real shot.
The opportunity's there, and you don't just throw a guy on the roster just to benefit him. There's a reason that he's been added to the roster, so hopefully he gets a good shot at it.
And they cut Samaje Perine as well, presumably to clear that spot for Blake. So, yeah, best of luck to all the Tigers, all the Ole Miss guys in the NFL this season, and more. Yeah, man, we're about to get right in the thick of football season.
So before we finish, I did have a teaser earlier for you that I wanted to follow up on.
Go ahead.
This college football 25-esque box score.
Okay.
And we're going to pull it up. You may have seen this. This is the
Stephen F. Austin. I've not
shout
seen
out
this.
to Adam Chrysler for showing me this, our photographer.
Oh, my God. It was 70-0 at halftime.
This game was 70-0 at halftime, 42-0 at the end of the first. And then a little bit of mercy. They only scored once in the second half, but a 77-0.
Still get that shutout, baby. Where's North American? Where's North American University?
I don't know. This game was at the home of Stone Cold Stephen F. Austin. So, yeah, just an incredible box score. Just 53-yard pass, 47-yard pass, 61-yard pass.
Oh, they got
these are just the touchdowns.
They've got a neighbors on their team. I'm assuming no relation to Malik, but oh my God! So they were up 28-0 less than 10 minutes into the game.
Yeah, just a bloodbath. That's one of the joys of college football. Is just weird stuff's gonna happen.
Stephen F. Austin, offensive juggernaut 2024. Speaking of offensive juggernauts, you'll probably see a couple tonight on Friday Football Fever. Again, I'll be hosting tonight. I'll be anchoring in place of Doc Holliday. We'll have some fun, show some great highlights, show some great action around the area. We'll be on the air at 10:15. Our Griffin Demaray will join us with our game of the week as well. So tune in tonight. We'll have you covered on college football throughout the rest of the weekend. But for now, that is a wrap on episode 2 of Fast 5 Sports. For my guy, Jacob Gallant, I am Matt Infield. We will see you next Friday. But